Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I would like to call the May 25th, 2023 APCD hearing board meeting to order. It is 9:06 in the morning Pacific Daylight Time. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll and swear in any witnesses?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that Member Powers has notified us that they will be absent from today's proceedings. All remaining board members are participating in person with the inclusion of alternate member Engelman, who is sitting in for Member Powers today. Member Gonzalez. Member Engelman.
Present.
Member Spencer.
Here.
Vice Chair Schlick. Chair Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you. I would like to note for the record that Emily Helms, counsel for the hearing board, will not be present for today's meeting. In addition, Member Gonzalez and Vice Chair Schlick are not present at this time. I would like to ask that the following individuals please identify themselves for the record. Hearing our pollution control district staff.
Dan Plotner, program coordinator.
Mary Money, Civil Actions Investigator.
Scott Nectar, civil actions investigator.
Tiagi, counsel for APCD.
Thank you. I will now swear in those that wish to provide testimony on behalf on any item on today's agenda. This includes petitioners, respondents, and APCD staff. Please raise your right hand for the swearing in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in the matter before this hearing board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you.
I do.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so very much, Madam Clerk. We will now move to the items on the agenda as written. I mean, with one exception. Unfortunately, I have a hard stop at 11:30 in the morning. I mean, something that came up in our last minute, and I definitely need to leave. If that happens, and either member Schlick or the Gonzalez are not here to join, then we would actually lose 4. Okay, so we're going to be moving on the rules. That to the very end. Of this conversation, of this meeting, and then allow certainly all the time, for the petition to present the case. Okay, and then in the meantime, we will now move to the non-agenda public communication. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the hearing board on subject matter within the hearing board jurisdiction, but not an item on today's agenda. Before we proceed, Madam Clerk, have we received any requests from members of the public who wish to address on non-agenda public communication?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. We have received no requests from members of the public to address the board under non-agenda public communication. However, those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. One moment. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen, the Zoom screen, or by pressing *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide non-agenda public comment on the teleconference line this morning.
Thank you so very much. Madam Clerk. We're going to definitely move on to item B, which is approval of statement of proceedings minutes for April 13, 2023. I have also instructed Madam Clerk that for future packages that she adds, a table of contents or an index, that will be a lot easier for us to search. It has been quite some time, since I have been seeing such a hefty packet. I do not know how to keep it together, but certainly your eagle eyes, are appreciated. So let's actually then move on to the approval of the April 13, 2023. And this is the fourth statement of proceedings and minutes. And So have we received any petitions from the public, I mean, the members that wish to address the board today on administrative item B?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. We have no request from members of the public to address the board under administrative item. However, those members of the public that are joining us on the teleconference line. Technology. That are joining us on the teleconference line, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen or by pressing the *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide public comment for administrative item B on the teleconference line this morning.
Thank you so very much. Now, if that's the case, now then I'm gonna move on to the board members. And I know that there were pages upon pages, almost not me, that cures insomnia on this one by reading it. Are there any comments from board members on the item B, which is approval of the numbers?
This is for the previous
Yeah,
meeting.
for April 13th, 2020.
Yeah, I hate to be difficult, but I was only here for a portion of the meeting, so I can't comment on the entirety of the minutes.
Dr. Spencer.
I read it and I didn't find any issues, but I'm sure somebody else's eagle eyes might have open to that possibility. So I don't know if anybody else who was here at that time, either from the district or petitioners, has any comment to say as well. I'd be interested to know.
Well, as I said, it can cure insomnia. So I read, this it's entirety.
By the way, I did read it.
But I mean, I was kind of falling asleep. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I believe it's on page 65. Let me see, maybe I'm lying. Let me actually switch no screens here because I'm doing the very same thing. as well.
65.
Oh, you found it too?
It is 65.
Okay, so, I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, yeah, sometimes, I mean, I don't know how you do it, I mean, but there are so many petitions here that, let me actually get here. On this one. And I see though that maybe there's a reference, I mean, on the bullet plate template, it happens to the best of us, so, and that. Kind of, I mean, switches, I mean, one petitioner with the other. So I don't find that to be an issue whatsoever. Again, we haven't voted, I mean, on it. So, but definitely, that's one of that definitely I'm good at scrutiny. I did not find any issues with anything else. So, and it's page 65, the bullet check. I know, let me see if I cannot, this is not helping me. Did you get, oh, thank you. Okay, she's showing, I mean, I'm trying to find it on my laptop. And I think that if you move a little bit lower than that, something with the template, if I'm not mistaken, maybe on the, yeah, he says, see, I mean, there's a reference to newly applied approval. Yeah, so that needs to be changed to Olympic codings, which is the respondent in this case, and the abatement order. So that will be my only comments. I mean, that for definitely action. I mean, the APCD, do we actually have any comments?
Yeah, I found one comment and a suggestion for the board. I actually found it on page 6.
Okay.
And let me show you, it's at the bottom, the very bottom of page 6. And this looks like it's the minutes from the April 13th meeting.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out that at the very end where it says action and it's underlined, on the motion, Chair Rodriguez, seconded by Vice Chair Slick, the Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board accepted updates on petition 4527 and directed the clerk to notice petition 4527. I'm just going to skip that line here for additional status updates during regularly scheduled meetings on June 22nd and October 26th. So my suggestion or recommendation for the board is after status updates, just to provide some additional clarification for those 2 meetings to add. I actually wrote it down here to add what I would suggest where possible action or modification of the order can be taken. just to clarify the purpose of those two future meetings.
Yeah, I mean, it could be action as of noticing, I mean, for future, I mean, the events, for example, I mean, that if something can actually happen at that time, and we're required to know it. Personally, I have no issue with that, I mean, that's so,
Yeah, I mean, as long, I mean, in terms of where it belongs, whether it belongs in these minutes or whether it belongs in the notice of the meeting or both.
yeah.
But I would agree taking a report and not having something worded in a way that prevents us from taking any action that we want.
So I agree, so, I mean, Steve and I have known each other, I mean, so if I actually do not say no, I mean, Mr. Engelman, I mean, that you know what I mean, so what are your needs?
I don't have any really thought on that.
That's fine, so. So I think, that we can definitely add it here, just, because we're actually seeing this, I mean, right now, I mean, so. For the board, this is action, I have no problem with that. So, yeah. With those revisions, I mean, that we identified, I mean, do actually have a motion, I mean, that to approve, the item, which is not the board orders here. Go ahead, Joanne.
If I could just have clarification for, the language for the third action on petition 457 on page 6.
Could you please repeat? Yeah, Mary?
Yeah, what I have in my notes is where possible, action or modification of the order can be taken. And that would be right after the phrase additional status updates.
Any insertion there, yeah. I mean, with the revisions, I mean, is there a motion for approval?
Assuming there are no other comments, then I can move to approve.
Okay, I mean, do I have a second?
I don't feel like I'm in a position to be able to vote on this item because I can't attest to the accuracy of the proceedings from that meeting since I was present. I
Okay.
know that puts us in a difficult position because we don't have 3 voting members that were.
Very much so, so they would actually have, to postpone, I mean, the vote on that one, I mean, because, certainly, the rules, I mean, certainly say, I mean, that, we can vote, I mean, because, I mean, the information has been provided, but if you're not in that position, then we can actually vote, and it has to be continued
Well,
until the next.
Based on the fact that the APCD is here and two members were here and the objections were noted or the changes were noted, and the fact that I did review for just sort of compliance related, I guess I can vote
Okay,
in that case. I can second.
so I mean, Madam Clerk. Can you please call the roll?
Let me check all these. Member Gonzalez. Member Engelman,
Aye.
Member Spencer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schlick. Chair Rodriguez.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion passes with all members present voting aye with the exceptions of Member Gonzalez and Vice Chair Schlick, who are not present for today's hearing.
Thank you so very much, I mean, for that review, and certainly for reading the packet. I mean, item number C, I mean, on the agenda, is progress update for petition 4533, which is San Diego County Air Pollution Control District amendment order against respondent Olympic coatings. So, as customary, the board will take the update, from the APCD staff if there's anything, I mean, and then responded update from representatives of Olympic coatings. I believe Mr. Gregory Ramirez has joined, I mean, to speak on Olympic coatings behalf, and he also has completed a request to speak in, I mean, the page. So, so let's see, I mean, Madam Clerk, have you received any requests from members of the public that wish to address the board today on administrative item C?
Madam Chair, we have received no members of the public wishing to address the board on administrative item C. However, those members of the public that are joining us via the teleconference line Please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish. Excuse me, write those instructions 1 minute. Thank you. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen and by pressing *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to address the hearing board today on administrative items.
Perfect. No, if that's the case, we will allow thoroughly, that the staff, our district staff, to provide their comments, then we will actually follow, with Mr. Ramirez.
Okay, good morning, Scott Nestor, for the Air Pollution Control District. As you'll recall, on April 13, 2023, the hearing board issued an abatement order that's on page 67 of the agenda against Olympic Coatings that requires them to cease use of any coatings that contain hexavalent chromium until a permit to operate is obtained. Follow the conditions of the authority to construct for the abrasive blasting operation. Keep records to verify coatings usage and the need for a permit. And provide permit application information and pay fees in a timely manner. To bring you up to date, the district has not yet issued the authority to construct, as there was some information missing from that application. That information has been submitted by Olympic, and the district will likely deem the application complete this week. After that, the district will evaluate the application and issue it in accordance with the expedited processing request. Last week, on Friday, May 19th, the district inspector visited the site and found that there had been no application of liquid coatings, including coatings containing hexavalent chromium. The district inspector did find, however, that the abrasive blasting equipment had been used, and the district issued a notice of violation for operating the equipment without authorization. This is the same as previous violations. That is where the situation stands today.
Okay. I'm just not, reviewing certainly the orders again one more time. To make sure all the conditions. So, I know that there was very strong conditions saying that if we do not do this, violation. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Snatcher, for your update. Mr. Ramirez.
Good morning. In accordance with what we talked about in the last meeting, anytime the APCD has reached out, I responded and given them the information they needed. And we have ceased any liquid coatings. And in accordance with what we talked about before, we continue to do the blasting. Yeah, and I think that's about it.
Okay. Are there any questions, for Mr. Ramirez at this time, from the board members?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Dr. Spencer?
No additional questions.
Well, nothing indicates, on the conditions, that we have violated, again, the conditions of the stipulated order. That's good. So definitely, that, again, you're doing this because I know you were coming here. That's why I spent so much time on doing, my insomnia times. Okay, so that would actually make you cease operations completely. Okay, so I think, that is definitely we're going, on the right track.
Yep.
Okay, and how long, Scott, how long would it actually, how long would it take, for the district to issue, that authority?
It's tough for us to say.
I know.
I've heard, because of workload issues and things like that. It could be any time from like a week to a couple of months. So we're hoping that it's a week.
Okay. So hopefully we're hoping for the best, Mr. Ramirez, okay, so you're holding the end, I mean, the bargain here. But, you understand, however, that the district can show up, at any time, to your site. I mean, and whatever they actually find, I mean, that out of compliance, I mean, that you're definitely liable, I mean, that and, at the risk, I mean, to getting additional notices of violation.
Yes.
Okay, so I appreciate, your update, both parties. Oh, I mean, and definitely, I hope, that the authority to construct is actually issued soon. I mean, again, continue working with the district, I mean, on this case, I mean, that's so that, hopefully you get to operate, I mean, within the, the parameters of the authority to construct and eventually the permit. So, any comments, I mean, from Mr. Ramirez or the district on this case?
I don't have any.
Okay, I mean, that's so, is there a motion to accept the update as provided, I mean, during today?
I motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, I mean, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez, Member Gonzalez. Member Engelmann,
Aye.
Member Spencer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schlick. Chair Rodriguez.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that motion passes to accept the updates for administrative item C, with all members present voting aye, with the exceptions of members Gonzalez and Vice Chair Schlick, who are not present for today's meeting.
Perfect, I mean, that's so, the next item on the agenda is item D, that has to do with the discussion of the revised hearing board rule of procedures. Thank you, I mean, Mr. Ramirez, so have a good day. My suggestion is to move this item, for the end of the meeting, I mean, and if we're not able to capture this at the end of the meeting, then no need to then notice it for the next meeting. I mean, that's so, thank you so very much. Let's now, move, to the petitions, today, so, over here. Okay, that we have today, before us, petition 4530, which is the County of San Diego Department of Public Works, Palomar Airport landfill, and petition request a modification of the expiration date of the regular variance, which was granted, on January 12th, 2023, and scheduled to expire, the end of this month, May 31st, 2023. Based on the due to continued need for investigation and repair activities of damaged components, in the collection control system of the inactive municipal solid waste landfill next to the Palomar Airport, or known rather as the Palomar Airport landfill, located at 2016 Palomar Airport Road, Carlsbad 92008. And Madam Chair, before we begin discussion for petition 4530, have we received any requests from members of the public that wish to address the board on this item today?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. We have received no requests for members of the public to address the board on petition 4530. However, if those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen or by pressing *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide public comment for petition 4530 on the teleconference line this morning.
Oh, well, thank you so very much, Madam Clerk. As customary, the board will take the presentation from the APCD staff this morning, then respondent, presentation from representatives from County of San Diego Department of Public Works, Palomar Airport landfill, and then any members of the public, that may wish to address the hearing board today. Ms. Winfrey, welcome back. Yeah, Ms. Winfrey is the only individual, with the request to speak, sheet, the petition. Anybody else that would like, to address, the hearing board must fill one of these items, before addressing the board. Just wanted to let you know. That's so. While, the APCD provides, their statement, and their position, then you have time, if that's what you want to do. Who's going to be speaking on behalf of, exactly, APCD? Thank you, Mr. Nestor. Please go ahead.
I don't have any slides, not an extensive petition presentation today. I would refer you to the district's response to the petition for the extension. It starts on page 246 of the agenda.
I
246.
actually had it written to here, 246.
Yeah, okay.
Go
We're
ahead.
on the same page. Literally. Just to cut to the chase, the district's response says that the district is not opposed to the extension. But we would like to see more expedited progress toward finding and repairing the source of air intrusion in the gas collection and control district. The district recommends the same conditions and daily and weekly monitoring as currently in the variance. I would also note that since filing the district's response, there have been no exceedances of the 3.5% oxygen limit for the landfill gas and no exceedances of the 500 ppm surface emissions limit. The only additional request is for the petitioner to also send weekly reports to APCD comp at sdapcd.org in case I leave on vacation again. That's what my report says. So that we'll be able to get them if I'm not here. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nestor. I mean, good continuity. I mean, the option here, you know, so thank you so very much. Are there any questions, I mean, from staff?
I do. I have a couple questions for the district. First of all, can you just, sorry, this is a little bit remedial, but what's the reasoning for the 3.5% oxygen limit?
The reason for the 3.5% oxygen limit that is pertinent here is that it's an indicator for the integrity of the underground gas collection system. If there's a break in that underground gas collection system someplace, it will allow more air into it, and the oxygen will be higher than that.
Right.
So yeah, so it basically just shows the integrity of the system.
So it's basically an indicator of whether the system is collecting landfill gas as it's designed to do, or whether there's a problem.
Right.
Okay. So and I don't think this is district jurisdiction, but from a safety standpoint, is there any concern? And maybe this is something I need to address the county for regarding explosive atmosphere.
That would be a good question for
Okay.
the county.
Well, if we can address that at the right time.
You can see that that's going to be my question as well.
Okay.
It has been, you know, in the past.
Okay, the other question I've got is regarding the way that readings are taken. Having been a consultant for many years, I know that when you go out in the field and you put your wand out, you get, you know, readings will vary a lot. Is there some guideline or standard that's used that says you have to record the highest value or the stable value or something like that? I didn't see anything. Normally in a permit, there's something spelled out. I didn't see that sort of spelled out here in a way where, not suggesting that anyone at the county is doing anything to conceal a problem, but the way that it's written, somebody could go out and go, oh, I'll just put it over here, and then we don't have a high reading versus, you know, and if they see a high reading, they can just sort of move it. That's, you know, we're getting into sort of willful non-compliance, but I'm wondering if there's a standard that the district already has, or if there's wording that we need to be putting into the order here.
It's in the test protocol. It's not in the permit exactly where to place the probe, but it's in the test protocol generally.
Okay.
For that.
So is there a numbered test method then for that?
Yes, I don't know what it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. Those are the only questions I have.
Thank you so very much. You know, I mean, that Dr. Spencer, do you have any questions?
Nothing additional.
Thank you so very much. Ms. Winfrey, you know, welcome back again. You know, I mean, that's so, please, I mean, you know, the status and the position of the district. I mean, that's certainly, please, I mean, just delve into the details, you know, because environment notwithstanding and the weather notwithstanding, what progress, I mean, like concrete progress has been made?
So we do have a presentation, but if you'd like me to just answer the question, we have continued to do investigations and try to identify the source or sources of oxygen into the landfill. We have capped quite a few old lines. And we've sampled active lines to see if they have higher oxygen levels to try to determine if there's a break in that line or if it's collecting from an area where the line break may be. And we haven't found anything substantial over this last time period. We also investigated the storm drain that runs through or underneath the landfill, and its cap appears to be intact and is likely not the source of oxygen intrusion into the landfill. So we have seen since January 2nd that the oxygen levels at the flare have been below regulatory threshold. They've been below 2% during this time period. And we believe that's due to the rains that fell heavily over that holiday weekend, over the New Year's holiday. And the amount of rain that we've received previously in that weekend expands the clay cap cover of the landfill. And we believe that that sealed whatever line is likely to be broken in the source of that oxygen intrusion into the landfill. Because we did not have corresponding work happening when that oxygen level at the flare dropped. We don't believe it's attributable to a repair that we made, and that there's at least one additional source of oxygen intrusion in the landfill that we have not yet identified. As you guys know, maybe from previous hearings, but we haven't presented today, due to the site being an active airport on top of it, the gas system is underground. So we're not able to just walk along and the lines and get readings to determine where the likely break in the lines is. We have to excavate down into the landfill to find the lines and then investigate them in order to determine if there's a line break that's visible, or if we can see that again through that sampling of the gases that are present in the line. So while we've continued our investigations and we've continued remediations on site to improve the landfill's ability to contain any surface emissions and to improve the gas collection and capture, we do believe that there is still at least one oxygen source of oxygen intrusion that we have not identified or corrected at this point.
What challenges have you encountered working with the airport? Because definitely it has to be around, I mean, that their timing, flight paths and everything else is difficult.
It is. So this particular area where the high heat incident had occurred is at the east end of the runway. And so it is heavily regulated by FAA for safety purposes and reasons. And so some of our work can be done during the day, depending on where the work is located, but a majority of it is at night. And so it requires us to basically close down the runway so that we can have equipment and things on site, which would make it unsafe for air travel or airplanes at that point. So it has been logistically a challenge to get those things scheduled and then complete the work at night. Well, we don't really know exactly where we're looking. As we said, it's difficult for us to, all of these potholings are attempting to find where that line break is so that we can correct it relatively quickly. But we have to excavate into the landfill and we have to do the majority of that work at night, which has been a challenge. Also, we've talked about this previously, but when rain falls on a landfill, you can't go onto it for about 5 days afterwards due to potential damage to the cap and cover of the landfill, which can cause other problems outside of high heat incidents. And also due to this site having underground gas lines, when the site cover is wet and you move heavy equipment onto it, which is needed in order to do the type of work that we're doing to repair as well as investigate these lines, you can break additional lines by bringing that cap cover on when the cover is not stable. And so every time it rained, we really kind of pushed the boundaries this time to assess, is the site safe? How wet is the cover? Can we get in and do it? But it did result in numerous kind of, cascading delays of our work over that winter period. So now that the site has been dry for several weeks, we're able to get in there more effectively, but we still haven't found that oxygen intrusion source. We're kind of have come out of the space where we don't really have that many more spots to investigate and pothole, and we're moving forward with other remediations that will attempt to address the oxygen intrusion, including continuing with a cover improvement project, which is going forward in June, as well as continuing with the gas line, the phased gas line replacement project that the county has been undertaking for the last couple of years, with phase 1 being completed in 2021.
How are you working with the local, the citizens groups? They have been really very vocal about this, an extension that I'm just inferring. Could actually be challenged. We welcome that. Public needs to get involved. How are you working with them, if at all?
So we put up a website for the Palomar Airport landfill that it contains information about this incident and our response to it. We've also been providing updates through the Palomar Airport Advisory Committee, which meets every other month on the current status of the event. We've also responded to PRAs that the Citizens for a Friendly Airport have submitted to the county. And so we do provide them with the information through those two kind of the website updates, as well as the Palomar Airport Advisory Committee updates that are done every other month.
Have you received any feedback directly from them, indicating, the either satisfaction or dissatisfaction, with the type of information and the transparency with which you're actually running this project?
So yes, they have expressed that they would like us to directly communicate a variety of information to them. And that was considered by our department as to how we would communicate with them. And what I just described is the determination that we had decided to maintain our website and to update it periodically, and then to provide the updates through the Palomar Advisory Committee.
Yielding on the floor.
Well, I think there's a presentation you're planning on giving. So I think before I have any questions, I'll let you get through that presentation.
Okay, we would actually have to vote to accept the presentation.
Oh.
It's been great.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It was included in distribution.
That is so true. Thank you. Well, you've been into the brag stuff. Thoughts, so since they would definitely, you put it in the presentation package, that's why I fell asleep. Could you, let's actually get them into it. So thank you so very much. Ms. Winfrey.
Okay, thank you, Mia. Next slide.
There's a little bit of a lag.
All right, so portions of the Palomar Airport landfill were operated by the county as a municipal solid waste landfill from 1962 to 1975, as shown on the map. The county performs monthly maintenance and monitoring of the 3 closed landfill units to protect public and environmental health. Landfill gases are controlled by a system that extracts them, including methane, that occur naturally as organic materials decompose. And as we've discussed, this site is an active airport. Next slide. Monitoring data, including decreasing temperatures and low carbon monoxide levels, indicate that the heat event that was identified in October is over at this time. The high heat event, or HHE, was identified after an inspection observed unusual settlement of the landfill cover in a small area of Unit 3, seen here northeast of the runway, indicated in a yellow circle. Upon further inspection, evidence of elevated temperatures was observed in an underground vault that houses components of the landfill gas system, and oxygen levels at the flare increased. Elevated temperatures were limited to a small localized area less than 25 feet in diameter, and temperatures have declined since mid-November and are now within normal landfill temperature ranges. The event area is located in close proximity to an area where a high heat incident occurred in 2008, indicated on this map with the blue circle. There is no risk of an above ground fire, and there has not been any observed emissions from Unit 3 above regulatory thresholds since October. Next slide. After the event was identified, the county initiated a 3-phase response in consultation with regulatory agencies to quickly and efficiently gather data to monitor and resolve the event and to minimize impacts to the community and the environment. Following standard protocols of the solid waste industry, the county took measures to avoid drawing oxygen, which often contributes to subsurface heat events, into the area. We inspected the site to determine if other areas had evidence of elevated temperatures, and we increased the frequency of methane monitoring to ensure that surface emissions remained below regulatory thresholds. The county notified regulatory agencies within 24 hours and continues to work with the APCD, the local enforcement agency, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board to comply with all regulatory requirements, and is also working with the Federal Aviation Authority who approved limited day work in the area. Additionally, the county informed nearby businesses and made no-cost methane monitors available to all buildings within 1,000 feet of the affected area. The offer to receive these free methane monitors remains open to buildings in that zone, and all buildings on the airport have methane monitors at this time. Next slide. The county established baseline parameters to monitor carbon monoxide, which is an indicator of combustion, subsurface temperatures, and oxygen levels at the landfill gas flare. We are monitoring weekly for surface methane emissions and during excavation work as well. Emissions from Unit 3 have not exceeded regulatory thresholds since the high heat incident was identified in October. While this data indicates that the event has concluded, we are committed to ongoing monitoring as we diligently investigate the source of oxygen and implement site improvements to minimize the landfill's potential impact on the environment and the community. Next slide. So for this presentation, we're going to share some of our data with you, which we haven't brought to previous presentations. This graph shows oxygen levels at the flare since the event was first identified in October, and that red line indicates the 3.5% APCD permit limit for oxygen. As you can see, oxygen levels were the highest in the first 6 weeks of the event, but by December, oxygen levels began to drop. Notably, a damaged gas line was discovered and repaired on December 1st, and the cover improvement for a portion of this site was completed between December 20th and 21st. During this time, our investigations and remediations were ongoing. As I said, we've been investigating, sampling, repairing, or cutting and capping extraction system lines as we are able to. On January 2nd, which the little arrow on this slide points to, following a heavy rain event, oxygen levels fell to less than 2%. As we previously said, we believe that wet weather caused the clay cap cover of the landfill to expand, sealing a damaged gas line, stopping oxygen intrusion into the landfill. Oxygen levels have remained below regulatory thresholds since January 2nd until yesterday, when the oxygen was measured at 1%. Well, this is good news. We believe that the oxygen level is likely to increase again as the site continues to dry out, and we are committed to continuing investigations to identify and resolve any sources of oxygen intrusion. Next slide. The county installed 14 temperature probes in November to monitor this event. This graph shows the temperatures at 3 depths for the 4 temperature probes that had the highest temperatures during our event monitoring. These temperature probes are located in the immediate area where the heat event subsidence was located. As you can see, the temperature levels were highest in mid-November, with the highest observed temperature of 190 degrees and temperature probe 7 at 16 feet, and have been mostly declining since then, with a sharp decline in March and another March decrease this month. As of this week, the highest temperature reading was 114.4 degrees. And this is within normal landfill ranges based off of published literature, which says that normal landfill ranges are between 75 degrees and 115 degrees. Next slide. After the HHE was identified, we began work on investigations to identify the oxygen intrusion and resolve the event, and investigations are ongoing. This map shows the areas where we have done potholing to excavate the gas system lines to identify those possible issues causing the oxygen intrusion, and those are marked in red X's. We also investigated the nearby storm drain, which you can see here on the map approximately with the blue line. And we found that the cap and cover on the northern side, which is the upper side of the map here, the cap was in good condition and intact and was unlikely to be the source of oxygen intrusion into the landfill. Next slide. In addition to inspecting and sampling gas lines to determine their condition and oxygen and the level of oxygen within them, and repairing or cutting and capping them as we proceeded through our investigations, we are also in process for other remediations. Our contractor recently completed work to abandon some of the landfill gas component systems in the immediate area that had previously elevated temperatures to ensure that they are not allowing oxygen to enter the landfill. We're also working on additional cover improvements in the landfill, expanding on the previous improvements that we completed at the end of last year. We're also working towards the next phase of the gas system line replacement project in Unit 3 for this calendar year, with the final phase of work to be completed next year in 2024. Next slide. So these next couple of slides show where some of these improvements and changes to the gas system have been. So this slide shows the location of the new and abandoned gas extraction wells from work done this month. The green icons represent new wells that were installed, and the red icons represent abandoned wells, and they are on the red ones, as you can see there, are located right around where the highest temperatures were observed during this incident. Next slide. This slide shows the different work areas to improve the gas collection system, including the phasing of the gas system line replacement project. The green areas marked are identified for phase 2 and phase 3, but we have not determined the extent of what we will be able to do in phase 2 yet, but these are the areas that are remaining to have that gas system line replacement done in Unit 3. Next slide. Today, your board is considering our request to extend the regular variance to allow continued investigations and remediation through August to ensure that elevated temperatures do not recur. The county has complied with APCD variance requirements for monitoring and reporting since the emergency variance was granted in October. Next slide. So as in previous hearings, when you requested that we address the findings that are required in order for you to grant the variance, we'll go through these quickly. So petitioner is or will be in violation. We believe that it is likely that the site will be out of compliance for oxygen levels at the flare as the site continues to dry out. While the oxygen levels have been below regulatory threshold since January, the decrease in oxygen did not correspond to a repair we made at that time. B, compliance is beyond reasonable control. Due to the site-specific conditions and despite extensive investigations, we believe there is likely another source or sources of oxygen into the landfill that we have not yet identified or repaired. Next slide. C, closure or taking procedures will not result in reduction of emissions. Since this is a closed site where all operations are only to maintain the site to protect public and environmental health, any operations or taking the site will not reduce and will not result in reduced emissions. D, petitioner has considered curtailing operations. The site stopped accepting waste in 1975. Curtailing operations on the closed site will not improve public or environmental health or safety. Next slide. Thank you, Dan. E, petitioner will reduce excess emissions to the maximum extent possible. Emissions from Unit 3 have not exceeded regulatory levels since the high heat incident was identified in October. The county increased monitoring and provided free methane monitors to buildings on site and nearby parcels. The landfill gas system that was operated on site ensures that there are no nuisance gases or threats to the public health and safety. And ongoing repairs and remediation will reduce risks of future emissions. And next slide. F, petitioner will monitor and quantify emissions, and emissions are not likely to cause a nuisance or threat to public health or safety. As we previously said, there have not been any emissions and exceedance to regulatory thresholds since we started monitoring the events and the site with more frequency since October. The county has monitored emissions weekly, including meeting APCD's variance monitoring and reporting requirements. The county monitors for emissions during all excavation work, and no emissions above regulatory thresholds have been observed during that time. We continue to repair and adjust the gas system and landfill cover as needed to ensure that emissions do not cause a nuisance or a threat to public health or safety. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so very much. I think taking some notes here.
Yes.
Yes, and I believe I have to go back to page 246. I'm getting there. Are there any questions from the board members? We need to use Frankfurt.
I have questions.
Yeah, could you please, I mean, anyone?
Where to start? So can we go back to the slide that shows the graphic with the abandoned and new lines, please? There we go. Thank you. So if I understand right, the lines that are in red, those have been abandoned. And the green lines on this slide are everything that's in green is new and installed.
They're not, so these are not representing lines, they're representing extraction wells that are connected. to
Extraction
lines.
wells.
Yes,
So when you say extraction wells, is that removing gas
Yeah.
from the landfill?
so the extraction wells go vertically into the waste body
Mhm.
and they pull the gas from the landfill. And then they pipe it into the gas line system to go off to the flare to be burned off.
All right, so those new lines that those new wells that you've got in there are connected by lines and go to the flare. Flare, is that what's called flare?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so we're still completing the line connections, but the extraction wells have been installed.
Okay, so you're not yet collecting landfill gas from those new wells.
No,
Okay, when is that supposed to be completed or connected?
it's a work in progress. We just installed the wells last week. And so we're continuing to work towards getting the gas lines, but Brian is our consultant with SDS, who will be able to answer more specific timeline questions. So,
Okay.
Brian?
Yes, we're completing the construction of the lateral piping to connect the wells to the main gas headers. This week, one of them, as of yesterday, one of them is,
Before you proceed, I mean, Mr. Lupino, I mean, can you attest that you have been sworn in this morning?
yes.
Thank you so very much. Please continue.
One of them, as of yesterday, one of the gas extraction wells have been connected to the system. And we should anticipate in the coming weeks that all of the rest of the extraction wells will be connected as well.
So how long before all of them are connected?
The four you see there in the or the five there you see there in the northern perimeter would be within this week or next week. But unfortunately, the two there closest to the runway, those will have to be postponed or delayed until next month when we do have another night closure from the airport. Because since the proximity to the runway is very close, that's work that we need to conduct.
So that's the cause of the delay, and I assume there are sort of notification procedures you have to go through and all that, and this is the soonest that could be scheduled?
That's correct.
Okay,
If I may, the red ones that you see there that have recently been abandoned, those have been off since the incident started in October.
okay,
So we haven't lost any current function on the landfill since October.
okay,
Putting the two new ones in that are to the left of the red ones is really to reestablish and improve the gas collection in that area. So
Right.
there's no change from October, but previously those wells were online.
Okay.
We turned them off to avoid drawing oxygen into the area where we were experiencing those elevated temperatures at that time, because the oxygen can obviously feed the event as it was occurring.
right, okay. So is there, I'm not sure who I'm asking this question to, I'll start with you, I guess. Is there, because the lines have been abandoned and it's been sitting there for quite some time and we've had rain, so I don't know if that increases the rate of decomposition or decreases it, but does that create an increased risk of higher concentrations of methane and toxic gases at the surface?
So the wetter a landfill is, the higher your rate of decomposition can be, which would increase methane that is occurring within the landfill body. These are closed system lines, so rain does not get into them. However, liquids do accumulate in them due to condensate from the gas collection system. And there are, one of the items that we abandoned there that's marked in red is called sump 14. And so those sump pumps move that condensate out of the lines to allow the clear passage of the gas through the system into the flare. So the cap cover of the landfill plus the extraction of the methane and other landfill gases. Those are what reduce surface emissions. So as long as we have enough kind of pull on the system to move the methane out of the landfill into the flare, and enough cap to stop any surface emissions just from moving up, that's where we get our surface emissions control and reduction. Do you have anything to add to that, Brian?
Sure. Yes, so methanogenesis does accelerate with wet waste. The abandoned line was grouted in, so we injected the grout into the entire 8-inch pipeline and the extraction wells there in the red dots there, as well as the sump 14. Wells N19, N20, VCW 24, the vaults were removed from those locations and soil cap was inserted in its place. So in their place. So there is a cap that seals each of those extraction wells, and wells, replaced redrill wells N19A and N20A, those are like Jen said, are meant to continue extraction of gas in those areas. So within the next month or so, we'll have those 2 wells back online, and we don't anticipate any extra surface emissions from the original abandoned line due to the cap that we sealed for the 3 wells.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I may have not have been clear about my question. My limited understanding of the way landfills work is these collection lines create sort of a negative pressure effect where if there's methane accumulating under the cap, that it gets pulled out and sent to the flare rather than creating enough pressure to come out through whatever openings there are somewhere, because there's always an opening, even if you've got a tight cap on there. So with the abandoning of this line, that reduces the amount of negative pressure in that area, right?
Correct. So the negative pressure comes from the blower system at the flare station. The fact that the vertical extraction wells are grouted in, it fills that annular space. So the gas will migrate towards the path of least resistance, which would be the next well with the surrounding wells.
Okay.
So you'll see in the northwest section there's VCW 45, 46, and 47.
Right.
Those are on and actively taking the gas from the areas, and the same with the few in the east there on the other side of the abandoned system.
Okay. Completely different line of questioning now. The oxygen levels dropped, and that seemed to correspond with when the rain started, right? Which is before or after that area with those wells were abandoned?
So the red wells that you see there have been turned off since that first week of the incident in October. So they were basically manually just shut down.
So
So there was no extraction from them at that time until now.
Okay, and after those were shut off, you still had higher oxygen levels?
So yes, so after they were shut off, we still had higher oxygen levels. So those were shut off in the first week or like maybe 8 days after the incident was first identified.
Okay.
And oxygen levels at the flare remained highest at their highest levels for that first 6 weeks of the event.
Okay.
We did see 2 corresponding decreases in oxygen due to repairs that we made, but they were about 0.5% each. And so those occurred in December. And then when we've had that heavy rainfall after we had had kind of consecutive rainfall events over the New Year's holiday is when the oxygen really kind of came down. And so that didn't correspond with one of our repairs.
So, and I know this feels like jumping around, but I'm sort of going somewhere with this. The potholing that you're doing, can you explain like what you're doing there, what you're looking for, and
Yes, so.
why you select a certain spot versus another spot?
So Brian, probably better. So I'll do the overview and then we'll kick it over to Brian. So we're looking for a variety of things. We're looking for old lines that have been abandoned over the years that this site has had a gas system put into it since the mid-90s. to ensure that those pipes aren't allowing any oxygen intrusion. So when we find them, we sample them to see if there's airflow in them, if there's vacuum on them, and then if they're not part of our active system, to cut and cap them. So stopping them from allowing any type of air movement through them. We're also excavating to find our lines in order to see them physically and to see, is there a break in this line? So is it allowing oxygen to be pulled through the surface of the cap into the landfill instead of the reverse where the methane is going out? So that vacuum can also work to pull oxygen through the cap of the landfill and into the system. And so that's what we're also looking for. And then we've also kind of sampled the lines to see how much oxygen is in each line and to try to identify and pinpoint where we should be looking in the landfill in the gas system for that likely oxygen intrusion. Because if you have the oxygen intrusion occurring in one spot, logically you would see that higher oxygen level through the vacuum that's occurring in that area.
Right.
And so that's what we've been doing for potholing, is to try to identify, find those lines, find the old lines, sample, inspect, cut and cap or repair as we move forward.
And it would seem like, since you haven't had elevated oxygen levels since the rain started, that oxygen indicator that you probably need to really pinpoint where this is coming from. You sort of have to wait until it reappears before you can do that.
So that's one thing that we have, you know, as the system dries or as the cap dries, we can observe how, you know, the oxygen levels are showing at that point. But we're also moving forward with a line replacement project to say that if we can't identify where the line break is occurring, you know, we'll continue to just methodically replace these lines with new lines. With the hope that not only will that process identify and repair the oxygen intrusion, but it'll actually just be a system improvement overall.
Okay.
Anything to add to that, Brian?
No, you did great.
And I think I got sort of a vague notion of the replacement program. And I guess you're probably prioritizing certain areas over other areas. Is this line replacement program going to eventually replace all of the lines that were in place at the time the incident took place?
So that section in that upper northwest section was the first phase of the line replacement. So those lines have already been replaced. They were replaced at the end of 2021. We did sample those lines to see if they had oxygen in them. And they didn't have higher levels of oxygen than you would expect, finding indicating that they were not causing an oxygen intrusion, which led us to this more extensive investigation. But yes, the goal is by the end of 2024 that all of the lines within Unit 3, which is the waste unit at the end of the runway, will have been replaced.
End of 2024. you said,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions, Steve?
I think, give me 1 second, let me check the ones here. And my apologies to especially the board members in the county. I know that some of this was covered previously, but I wasn't sitting in the chair at the time, so.
No need.
So. I'm gonna ask for a little conjecture now. You're dealing with a challenging problem, I understand that, and you've got a lot of bright minds, you know, landfill specialists thinking about this and working on this and under pressure to get something done. At this point, is there, like, do you have any data to point to, we think it might be this? Or is it right now, it seems like it's sort of a random, almost like a random chance thing. I mean, obviously you can prioritize older lines and that sort of thing, but you've had time to kind of go to the most likely suspects. And now you're going to kind of, well, we can check other things, or we can wait until the oxygen returns and then we'll have something a little more definitive to work with. So, I mean, at this point, like, where do you go with this? Are you really more in a waiting game to wait for the oxygen to increase again? Or are there more things that you can do that are beyond wild guessing to let's dig some more holes and look at more lines?
So if you can go to slide 8, Mia, so this has the potholing locations. So when we initially started our investigation, obviously we started in the area closest to where we were seeing those elevated temperatures. And then as we started investigating, we were looking for any lines that were running through that area. And so we targeted in on that. And then as kind of the oxygen levels were fluctuating, and as we were kind of assessing the system, we used some of that data to try to pinpoint like this we think is a likely spot. But besides the one broken line that we identified in December, we haven't really found what we think is the oxygen intrusion. So we do continually look at the system data, as well as kind of what the oxygen levels are doing in order to try to say like, okay, well, you know, if the oxygen level dropped, if the oxygen level increased, what are we seeing in the wells themselves as far as gas data to try to pinpoint into that. But we've pretty much gone through all of the areas where we had reason and kind of a analysis in order to look at either from proximity or from lines that were intersecting with the system. So we are at this point continuing a couple of last potholing locations, but we've exhausted a lot of our reasoned positional kind of targeted investigations. And then I will let Brian add on to that because he's more involved with the system analysis and the nitty gritty of the potholing locations.
Right, so we looked at old records, old maps that we had, and also used in Google Earth, because on Google Earth you can go back in time to see kind of the scarring of old trenches. So that was very successful, and which led us to some of the locations you see there on the map. And you know, we did identify some of the old lines that intersected the high heat event area, and we cut and capped those, and that's I think partially what attributed to some of the decreases. But like Jen said, you know, we've sort of exhausted all of our you know, avenues of analysis, and you know, we have identified, you know, another location that we still need to go pothole. But yeah, I think, you know, going forward at this time, I mean, it's moving forward with a system expansion to really exclude the old portions of the collection system is probably a more beneficial way to, I guess. Sorry, what's the word? I guess cut out the old system to, you know, get to, you know, just separate from the rest of the collection system.
We are continuing, I will say, to review old records of the landfill to identify other potential possible sources of oxygen intrusion. As we mentioned, the site is, you know, an old site. It operated decades ago, and there's been layerings of repairs and lines and activity on the site, and not all of those have been recorded in ways that you can just look at, you know, one document or one map or a series of maps that they, you know, here's all of the, you know, infrastructure in the site. And so we're continuing to look at old records, continuing to review, continuing to look at the system data to see if that offers us additional pathways into investigation. But I think, you know, we're being transparent here and just saying we don't have a lot of additional investigation planned at this point until system data and potentially the drawing out of the site, you know, reveals additional data to us. And so we're proceeding with that improvement of the cap cover, which again should help seal in any line breaks or weaknesses in it, as well as that line replacement system, and then continuing to investigate as we find avenues of investigation.
Did you have something to say?
Yeah, well, my question is a little bit more global than this. You know, I know that when we, at the initial hearing in January, we selected today as a date by which you thought you would have the problem identified and fixed, and now we're asking for it in days. So my question is, what's to be gained by the other days? Do we have good reason to think that we will find something that's going to be fixed and will be done? Or is the better course of action to try to expedite this complete replacement of the system instead of doing it next year, try to move that a little bit sooner? I'm just asking the question.
Yes.
Because I'm sure members of the public have it.
So
No,
Yeah.
I actually had the same question.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it is, yeah, go ahead.
So we did finish the majority of the investigations that we had identified, as we discussed in January, by the end of this current variance period. we unfortunately have not, we don't believe that we've resolved the oxygen intrusion. Again, with the oxygen level being low, it's difficult to, say that definitively. But that fault again didn't correspond with a repair we made. So this extension on the variance is to basically allow us to continue to investigate as these, additional points of investigation are identified and to be made. We do still have every anticipation that the oxygen level will increase because it didn't correspond to a repair we made. So we're continuing to make repairs to, again, the things that we've talked about that we think will have not just an impact on the oxygen level, but the overall function of the landfill system to contain the landfill gases. And then extending this variance just allows us to continue to investigate while we're doing that and gives us the protection of having the variance from the APCD as we move forward. If the oxygen levels do rise and we're out of compliance, and we would have to come back here again and potentially call for an emergency variance again. So this was, kind of a rational decision on approaching this. This variance is not intended to give us any additional protections as we move through these larger remediation projects. We are not asking for this variance in order to give us protection as we move into the line replacement project, which is actually wouldn't be started until after this variance, as we requested it today through the end of August. It would be after that time period. So our intent is not to get additional protections from potential notices of violation. With this variance, it really is just to allow us to continue to conduct investigations as we identify the possibilities and the likelihood of them.
So the variance, however, what it does, it protects you from exceedances, the oxygen and surface, the gases. That's about it, because I believe, that is over the 500, ppm, which we're definitely well below that, and above, 3.5%, of the oxygen. So that is the protection. That's what it's the variance for. That's it.
And
With
only
regards
when
to-
we're doing work, correct, Scott?
That's correct.
So only when we're doing work, it doesn't give us a blanket protection
I-
for the
yeah,
landfill.
I understand, so again, that was part B. So so definitely, as you're actually doing work, that is the protection that you're seeking. Since your investigation, however, has not ended, by the way, I wanted to give you the variance until September.
I remember that.
Thank you, because we've been here before on that one. It is,
Yeah.
I find, that anything that has to do with landfills is like a baby, give them 9 months. But you're not there. So that is what you actually want to actually have. Okay, so, and then the end date that you're requesting is 31st of August?
Yes.
If it ever dries out?
Yes.
So that is my thing here, again, that we, we're a group of 3, certainly on that one. Hopefully you'll definitely find something that sorts something rather fast. But you pretty much
Yes.
3 more months.
Yeah, and it's possible, it's all conjecture even to say that it's a line break, It could just be some sort of weakness in the cap that we haven't been able to identify despite our months of, tromping through that area and inspecting it and having all types of geotechnical and geophysical investigations. It's possible that we just haven't been able to see it. And so, we're taking these steps of the cover improvement project and things like that, that would address those without us specifically identifying exactly where it is. So I think if the variance that we've requested today is granted and the oxygen levels are still low at the end of August, I think we have to call it and say,
Yes.
the oxygen intrusion appears to have been addressed at this point. And will return if and when the oxygen levels rise and recur. But at this point, we still want to be able to actively investigate and to trench and do all of that. As we identify those opportunities and the likelihood that we might be able to find the
But
oxygen.
the district, has indicated that they would like to for the development not expectations, so.
Yes.
Okay, don't get me wrong, we all want that, I want for you to actually see the source, I'm not addressing. What I have not seen, however, because I was not that critical, then, what's a timeline? I really would like to see, again, you have engineers, you have, some chemists over here, and you have doctor, just to see, how it is that you build that, then you didn't know, that, but definitely, would you be opposed, that to, sharing your timeline of the project between now? And the end, of the variance request, if that was, that approved for you? And I'm not talking, please, when I actually say timeline, I'm looking at the project timeline. Not on this day, we talked to the APCD, no, what I want the detail. Okay, so I want to take a look at that, we can definitely learn a lot, from this, type of process. Why do I request this? And not only, that we're definitely getting, to the year, second, that definitely provides focus, to your, the activities there. One was not actually required, that at the beginning, I was nice to you, but I think, that we actually need to monitor this a little bit closer. Okay, that you definitely have, the people in the community, who are very, very well versed, that many scientists, many engineers, in that community that you're serving, I think that I would actually provide on that level of clarity, that and definitely transparency in your activities, okay? The second, I know that you actually provide weekly reports, to the APCD, but your conditions do not indicate when to notify APCD when you're out, of the 3.5 or the, above 500 ppm. I think, that a phone call, would actually be relevant, because definitely that's something, that you would actually be notifying of the community members as well. So it's not by, their review, but by, your active notification, to both APCD, which, and also, that to the citizens. So, and on the use of the gas monitor, and I think I know that I asked this question before, but I just wanted for you to confirm. When you issue those gas monitors, for methane, that, for example, I say that I don't know if it's a one single gas, grass, but I really do not know what type of monitor do you use. But do you, did you also issue instructions on how to use? For example, from a training perspective, this is what this is for, and this is how you use it, and these are the levels that you should be looking forward to, because otherwise, just like, for the LEL, did you issue that information? Because otherwise, thank you for the monitor, but it will be somewhat irrelevant, to the use. We have no idea how to use it. They have no idea what the data is.
So we did provide the monitors as well as the instructions and the description of what it was to the recipients of them. So it did discuss how to install it, how to place it, what it monitored. It didn't specifically get into LEL, but they are set at LEL levels. So they're set, the indoor methane monitors are usually set at 10% of the LEL. So sufficient time and warning for people to hear the alarm and to act on that by leaving the building and getting further investigation.
LEL, for the folks, here is lower explosive limit, okay, for the gas explosions. Okay, so, now, if this variance request was granted, how would the neighbors know about this? Do you have a communications plan, with the neighborhood saying, look, thank you very much, if you see the extended this, through the end of, August, as one of the citizens, have you thought about that?
Not particularly for this variance. We could certainly do an update to our website to include that. And we, as I said, we report every other month to the PAC, the Palomar Airport Advisory Committee, which is open to the public and to the various community around, as well as the airport users and business operators. So that is generally how we communicate this information to the public. But we are in communication with obviously the properties owner, the renters on the airport property. And we've also been communicating with the properties that are directly north of the airport property.
I received 300 emails daily. I have a counter.
Yeah.
I definitely don't like passive communication, which is what I would consider this, and I'll do to your, website, because it actually has, these citizens have to go in as opposed to the county, again, to go actively, and notify the personnel. So would you be opposed just to actually send a notification to them?
How are you defining the neighbors?
You're the neighbors, on Palomar and, airport, those are the the folks know who are actively impacted, I know for any operations that would actually be there and incidences. So those will be what I would define your neighbors.
So on the airport property?
Yeah.
Yes, we can do that.
I mean, and then also, I mean, send an active notification to the citizens of the airport. I'm butchering the friends, citizens for the airport. something.
Brandon here.
Thank you. See, I was actually forgetting that. Thank you.
We, so for that one, we have discussed that with our department and our department direction. The last time we talked about it, which was just a couple of months ago when we revisited it, was to continue to provide information through the PAC and through our website. And not to provide direct communication to particular groups or citizens.
Okay, I mean, understand that. I mean, definitely, I would say that I would highly encourage, I mean, this discussion that you could actually have, I mean, with your management. I mean, that's what includes, again, I mean, the one that is provided, I mean, the citizens of the PAC, I mean, on that one. Something tells me that if I actually find that, I mean, after the fact, I would not be happy if I was the leader of that. Because they also owe themselves, I mean, to the members of their association as well. Okay. Those are, I mean, my questions on that one. APCD also advised us, I mean, so thank you, I mean, Scott, that they would also need to be looking at incidences maybe of nitrogen oxides. I mean, the word continuous, if I actually did not misunderstand, I mean, that you're right of.
That there is, yeah, some possibility of increased NOx emissions, nitrogen oxides emissions. I would need to look at the permit to see if there is a NOx limit for the flare in it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It has not been a concern so far.
So far. Okay, I mean, but it's more of an advice, something at this point in time, so something that I know that APC will look into. Okay, so. Yeah,
One more
please
question.
go ahead.
Going back to this, we're waiting for the oxygen to return part of the discussion. I think you're kind of assuming that's going to happen as things dry out. What plan do you have in place to respond to that expeditiously once it happens?
By plan, do you mean to resolve the oxygen?
Well, I'm assuming you, first thing would be diagnosis, right? You have to figure out where it's coming from. And, I'm sorry, I'm gonna just, this is where my head is. I have no idea if this is even appropriate, but I've got a stack testing background and I fix sprinklers in the backyard all the time. So if there's a leak, there's ways to do it that are sort of analogous to this. So you've got a number of lines that feed into a main header. In each of those lines, I would assume you need to know what the oxygen content is before it goes into the main header, so that you know which line this oxygen is coming from. So in my ideal world, you've got little oxygen sensors in there right now. Obviously, you don't have those. Maybe you have sampling ports that are accessible. I don't know about that either. But I would hope that, knowing that we've been waiting since January for the oxygen to return, it's going to come, that you would be ready to go, okay, oxygen, we just got the 3.5%, or it's going up. Let's get out there tomorrow or next week or whatever. And that the plan's already in place so that when that oxygen returns, you're like, there's no like discussion or anything. It's just a matter of, SCS coming out, having their engineers scheduled to come out and do whatever work needs to be done so that you get the answer as quickly as possible instead of going, oh, oxygen happened, let's come up with a plan now.
Yes.
So I'd like to know, I would actually like to see that you have that plan or that you have that plan developed soon.
Yeah.
So we do there's one sample port in area 3 in unit 3 that we do plan on monitoring on a weekly basis going forward. And that'll give us the oxygen concentration of the entire unit 3. So there aren't sample ports positioned systematically throughout the piping, just due to the risk of those snapping off the header and creating another oxygen.
Sure.
So, but we do have one, and we will monitor that weekly. We've already started monitoring it. And we'll keep track of the oxygen concentrations and see as things dry out, whether it'll increase or not. Just to speak on how wet things are out there in our recent excavations, we were down about 4 or 5 foot deep, and there was water coming out of the side of the excavation trenches. So it is still very saturated out there. It's like you're digging into a sponge, basically.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
So, hopefully as the weather dries, or heats up, that'll dry. Going back to that, yes, that's how we typically systematically identify oxygen leaks in a above grade system, right? We have sample ports all over the
Right.
place, and then that way we can hone in on the source. But the best we have is the one, it's over by the blast fence of the runway, and we'll test that one going forward.
So you like your base, there's no oxygen sensor at the inlet to the flare?
There is an oxygen sensor at there.
Okay, so you would know sooner than that, based on the fact that you've got a sensor that is taking continuous readings, like, do you have remote access to those data?
Yes,
So you can see those at least daily during the.
yeah, and we can check the daily.
Okay. So that's just the first step though, right? Okay, now we've got oxygen increasing, so that weekly monitoring, I'm not sure what that really adds, if you already know it's happening in the flare. But
Well-
at some point, if it starts going up, then it's like, okay, now we've got to figure out where it's coming from. Do you
Right.
have a plan in place for what you would do once the oxygen concentration increase?
Right, so the weekly monitoring of the sample port, I think is necessary because it's just, it'll, I guess, compartmentalize unit 3.
Oh, I
We
see,
have-
okay,
we have
because
units
the
1 and
flare
2.
covers 1 and 2 as well,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
The plan in place, we would then, of course, notify the county we're seeing an increase in oxygen. And then we would have to, of course, schedule more excavations, and that entail communications with airport operations and possibly scheduling more night closures, depending on our suspicions. We'll have to take a look at the well field in area 3, in its entirety, so we can see oxygen levels. We don't have any, like I said, sample ports on the gas collection system piping, but we can take a look at oxygen levels at the individual extraction wells.
I see.
Well, any other questions for somebody to make a motion? Okay. Actually, let's do something. Let's actually take a 10-minute break, while I actually finish, my other details and additional conditions, sorry. So that we can actually make a motion and vote. Okay, thank you. So we'll be back, at about 10:45. Thank you. business. So welcome everybody, and also, the ones that are joining us via YouTube, or who will be watching, this, proceedings a little bit later. So at this point in time, I am ready to make a motion.
Do we have any members of the public that will want to comment on this?
Oh, thank you so very much. I mean, Dr. Spencer. Yes, so thank you for the reminder. Madam Clerk, do we actually have any public, any members of the public who would like to comment on this, petition?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. There are no members of the public, we have received no requests from members of the public to address the board on petition 4530. However, if there are, one moment. However, those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by pressing *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide public comment for petition 4530 on the teleconference line this morning.
Thank you so very much, and thank you, Dr. Spencer, for the reminder. That's so, now let's actually start, with the motion, that for this petition for extension, of the end date, of the regular variance. Item A, the petitioner, right now will be in violation, of district rules, 59, parenthesis D, parentheses, II, parentheses A, and 59, parentheses B, parentheses 3, as it relates to conditions number 7 and 8 of permit to operate APCD 1998-PTO-910733. Okay. And item number, in item B rather, the due to conditions beyond the reasonable control of the petitioner requiring compliance will result in either an arbitrary or reasonable taking of property or the practical closing of business. Petitioner operates an inactive landfill that continues generating natural gases from expected decomposition and are controlled and monitored for compliance. Despite regular maintenance and despite the repair and work, the petitioner finds itself with an inability to find the source of oxygen, the production or the root cause for the gas exceedances. During the excavation activities, excavation and corrective activities, shall we say? Because you have CAP and you have other stuff. At Calamar Airport landfill. The continue. This petition is exclusively. Addressing, activities that are focused exclusively to area/unit 3. Okay, and so let me add this. That I'm going to carry from the previous. So just for explanation. In this instance, the oxygen levels are an indication of gas collection system integrity and effectiveness. And petitioner continues to work diligently with the APCD and communicating the status of repair of this project. On their website. In addition, petitioner is classified as an essential public service, provided the necessary repairs to promptly come into compliance would be, the unreasonable burden. See, such closing or taking would be without corresponding benefit, in reducing air contaminants currently. This inactive landfill is not accepting waste. And there is a need for continuous control of landfill gases and emissions, which are continuously monitored. On this day, they have reported no exceedances in either the oxygen levels, on the surface gases, according to the permit, requirements. However, there is an expectation, that either or both, one or both, of those gases could be exceedances, with a continued project. The petitioner for the variance has given consideration to curtailing operations of the source in lieu of obtaining a variance. Petitioner will operate or repair activities only in area 4/unit 3 and has accepted the conditions, to the variance, for controlling emissions and environmental impacts to the maximum extent feasible. For item E, that during petition, that during the period of the variance is in effect, the petitioner will reduce excess emissions to the maximum extent feasible. Petitioner will focus not on the repair activities only and accept the conditions of the variance for controlling emissions and environmental impacts to the maximum extent feasible. In addition, petitioner will continue ensuring, to use cover caps and make gas monitors available to neighboring businesses. To again minimize impact, to those neighbors. During the period of the variance is in effect, petitioner will monitor or otherwise quantify emissions level from the source if requested to do so and report these emissions level to the district pursuant to a schedule established by the district. Petitioner will focus on repair activities only and accept the conditions of the variance for controlling emissions and environmental impacts to the maximum extent feasible. In addition, they'll continue to use the cover caps and the corrective actions, that have been approved and making the gas monitors available to neighboring businesses. So let's actually move to, okay, I'm getting there. To add. Okay, the extension to the regular variance, the hold it here, is requested for the period, for condition number 8. For the time and place of repair for PTO and condition number 7 for the rules that I already mentioned and also the permit I already indicated. The conditions are as follows. Petitioner shall perform daily monitoring of for landfill gases, oxygen concentration at the flare station. Petitioner shall perform daily surface emissions monitoring in the area or areas of excavation during any excavation or repair. Petitioner shall perform weekly surface emissions monitoring in all 3 areas of the landfill. Petitioner shall perform daily leak monitoring. On the GCCS components affected when the GCCS is shut off during any excavation or repair. I should have spelled that out. And then in addition to that, petitioner will provide a detailed timeline, the 7 working days from today, to the APCD, according to the instructions actually provided. I would like, for also, for the petition to also provide notification either via email or phone call, to Mr. Scott Nestor, when they witness, exceedances or either surface gases above, 500 ppm or, exceedances of the oxygen limit, per permit. In addition, that petitioner will also provide a certification of the extension of this variance, to the neighboring businesses, that those located on the Palomar Road, Palomar Airport property, which is on Palomar Airport Road, never mind. And then petitioner shall submit weekly reports, to the district that include the following: plan schedule for excavation and potholing events for the following week, description of all diagnostics, excavation and repair activity, measurements reported during monitoring of the items which are captured in conditions A, B, and C. Then petitioner shall submit the weekly reports every Wednesday by 4 p.m. to Scott Nestor, at the email address provided. And this is not or, and apcdcomp@sdapcd.org. And then, of course, they continue. Petitioner shall notify the district within 24 hours when repairs have been completed and compliance is achieved. And the regular variance shall terminate when compliance is achieved. Or August 30, or on August 31st, 2023, whichever of those days is sooner. Woo, okay. So that is my motion. For approval for an extension of this variance, to go never to exceed August 31st, 2023.
May I make a suggestion to,
Yes, please.
or clarification maybe?
Yeah.
You had a requirement in the extension to notify APCD if if there are exceedances. We should put in a time frame in there
On the,
within X
within 20,
hours, within 24
with,
hours.
the following working day, how about that? The following working day, because they give that, they need to assess, the following working day, from this corporate.
Okay.
Good point.
And did you had a similar, I thought you had a similar notification requirement to the public.
I'm gonna allow them to actually work that with them. I highly advise that it is an active notification as opposed to a passive notification from their website. I will have a lot of citizens very happy with this an active notification, so let's have it like. Do I get a second?
Second.
Okay, I mean that, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez, member Gabe. Excuse me, my brain just went back many years. Member Gonzalez. Member Member Engelmann,
Aye.
Member Spencer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schlick. Chair Rodriguez.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that item passes to modify petition 4530 with the conditions, the amended conditions as spoken by Madam Chair, with all members present voting aye with the exceptions of members Gonzalez and Vice Chair Schlick, who are not present for today's meeting.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, everybody, continue working on that. I mean, I would actually say that I don't want to see you back here again, but something tells me, maybe, it's my gray hair that you will be. So, I mean, let's continue, working together. I mean, that we're collaborating really very well. I mean, that to see if we can pinpoint or craft something a little bit more effective, for all of the parties involved here. I mean, with that, I thank everybody. I mean, and this concludes, today's business. I wish you a fantastic night.
Sorry, but there's, we have to go back to.
Oh,
The rules.
item
The fun
D,
part.
the rules, the fun part. Well, item D. Again, I have, a hard stop, at 11:30. And in my head, I already had to continue until next meeting. And my proposal would be actually to continue, this item until next meeting, and hopefully we will actually have not only, this helps, senior county council for the APCD, but also, the full board.
That makes sense to me, especially considering Vice Chair Schlick has been integrally involved in a lot of the details of the
Correct.
rules.
So, yeah, so legally, verbiage, so, do we need to vote on that? Yes, so that is my motion, to continue until next meeting, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez, just for clarification purposes, to allow for proper noticing, that would be postponed until the June 22nd
Yes.
meeting. With that, go ahead and take the roll, take the motion, sorry, call the votes, call the vote. Member Gonzalez. Member Engelmann,
Aye.
Member Spencer.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schlick. Chair Rodriguez.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that motion passes with all members present voting aye to continue administrative item D, the discussion for the rules of procedure to June 22nd, 2023, with the exceptions of member Gonzalez and Vice Chair Schlick, who are not present for today's meeting.
Thank you so very much. That something tells me that we may actually have to have a special meeting just to actually take a look.
Perhaps.
Okay, yeah, it looks that way. Well, now the meeting has concluded. All the items have been addressed. Petitioner has the extension. That please, good luck. Continue doing the good work. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. The next meeting of the APCD hearing board will take place on June the 8th. 2023 at 9 o'clock, in this location. Again, enjoy the holiday. Thank you, Mia.